Part 1. The moon was quiet, empty, and cold. It hung in the blackness of space like a forgotten rock, circling an uncharted planet far from Earth. Above its gray surface floated a small spaceship called the Eclipse. The ship wasn't sleek or shiny like the ones in movies. It was practical, built for science, not war. Inside, 4 people sat in silence, staring at the screens before them. They were tired, but no one spoke. The only sounds were the hum of the engines and the occasional beep of instruments. Jacob leaned over his console, his fingers tapping quickly on the keyboard. He was an engineer, and while he didn't say much, his mind always raced with ideas. His dark hair stuck up in places where he'd run his hands through it in frustration. Next to him, Mia stared out the window at the barren landscape below. She was a biologist, curious about everything, especially things she couldn't explain. Her eyes sparkled even when her face looked worried. Across the room, Kyle lounged in his chair, spinning it slowly as he checked the controls. He was the pilot, strong and confident, but sometimes too quick to act without thinking. Finally, there was Claire. She stood near the center of the bridge, her arms crossed. As the commander, she carried the weight of the mission on her shoulders. She was calm. Anyone who knew her could see the tension behind her steady gaze. Their job was simpler, at least. It had seemed that way back on Earth. Strange energy readings had been detected coming from this planet, readings that didn't match anything scientists had ever seen. Someone needed to go down there and find out what was causing them. That someone turned out to be the crew of the Eclipse. Now, as they hovered above the moon, none of them felt particularly excited about landing. There was something about this place that made their skin crawl. "We're getting closer," Kyle said finally, breaking the silence. His voice echoed slightly in the cramped space. "Should I start the descent?" Claire hesitated. "Not yet. Let's run another scan first." Jacob nodded and typed faster. Numbers and graphs filled his screen, but nothing looked familiar. Whatever was down there, it wasn't natural. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered under his breath. "These readings, they're off the charts." Mia glanced over at him. "What do you mean? Is it dangerous?" "I don't know." Jacob shook his head. "It's not radiation, not heat, not anything we've cataloged. It's like something else entirely." Claire frowned. "Something else," she repeated. "That's not very helpful, Jacob." "Sorry," he said, raising his hands defensively. "I'm just telling you what I see. Maybe we'll figure it out once we get closer," Mia suggested. She sounded hopeful, but her hands tightened around the edge of her seat. Even she wasn't sure how safe this was going to be. Finally, after several more minutes of scanning, Claire gave the order. "All right, Kyle, take us down, slow and steady." Kyle grinned, happy to have something to do. He flipped switches and adjusted levers, guiding the Eclipse toward the surface. The moon grew larger in the windows, its dusty plains stretching endlessly in every direction. But then, as they descended further, something caught their attention, a massive shape jutting out of the ground. It was partially buried, covered, in layers of dust and rock, but it was unmistakably artificial. Straight lines and sharp angles contrasted sharply with the natural curves of the terrain. "What is that?" Mia whispered, leaning forward. "No idea," Kyle replied, his grin fading. "Looks big, though." Claire studied the structure carefully. "Take us in lower. We need a better look." As they approached, details became clearer. The object was enormous, taller than any building they'd ever seen. Its surface shimmered faintly, as if it were made of some kind of metal that reflected light differently. Strange symbols were carved into its sides, patterns that twisted and curled in ways that defied logic. Jacob immediately started analyzing them, his excitement growing despite the eerie atmosphere. "These aren't random marks," he said, pointing at his screen. "They're deliberate. Like writing, maybe? Or instructions?" "Instructions for what?" Mia asked, her voice tinged with both curiosity and fear. Before anyone could answer, the artifact began to change. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through the ship. Lights flickered along its surface, pulsing in rhythm with the sound. Then, suddenly, a beam of light shot upward, forming a hologram in the sky. 2 figures appeared, towering over the landscape. One was tall and thin, with elongated limbs and glowing eyes. The other was shorter, humanoid but clearly not human, with translucent skin that shimmered like water. There? Arguing?
Mia said,
Squinting at the images. The figures moved rapidly, gesturing wildly as if trying to convince each other of something. Their voices came next, deep and resonant, speaking in a language none of them understood. But then, one of the figures paused, turning directly toward the eclipse. Its voice boomed, clear and loud, repeating the same phrase over and over. Please, don't drag humans into this conflict. The message ended as abruptly as it began, leaving the crew staring in stunned silence. What did it mean? Kyle asked, breaking the spell. Who are those things? And why are they talking about us? No one had an answer. Claire stepped forward, her expression grim. We need to figure that out, she said firmly. But whatever happens, we stay. Cautious. This isn't our fight. Mia nodded, though her eyes remained fixed on the artifact. Something about it drew her in, filling her with a mix of wonder and unease. Jacob continued typing furiously, trying to decode the symbols. Kyle gripped the controls tighter, ready for anything. And Claire stood tall, preparing herself for whatever came next. For now, the artifact remained silent, its secrets locked away. But the crew of the Eclipse knew one thing for certain. They had stumbled onto something far bigger and far more dangerous than they could have imagined. Part 2, the crew of the Eclipse sat frozen, staring at the massive alien artifact. The hologram had vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind only silence and unanswered questions. Jacob leaned closer to his console, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he tried to make sense of the symbols etched into the structure's surface. Mia stood by the window, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. Kyle shifted uncomfortably in his seat, gripping the controls tightly. Even though the ship wasn't moving, Claire, ever the leader, took a deep breath and stepped forward. All right, she said firmly, breaking the tension. Let's focus. Jacob, can you figure out what those symbols mean? Jacob didn't look up. I'm trying, but it's complicated. This isn't like any language I've seen before. It's almost like math, but not quite. Mia turned away from the window and walked over to him. Could it be instructions? Like how to activate something? Maybe, Jacob replied, frowning. But for what? And why would they leave it here, on this moon? Before anyone could answer, the artifact began to hum again. This time the sound was louder, more insistent. Lights pulsed along its surface, faster and brighter than before. Then, without warning, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. Dust rose from the moon's surface, swirling in the low gravity. What's happening? Kyle asked, his voice tight with alarm. Claire moved to the window, scanning the horizon. Stay calm. Let's see. She didn't get to finish her sentence. A sleek, metallic craft descended from the sky, hovering silently above the artifact. It was unlike anything they'd ever seen, smooth, seamless, and glowing faintly with an inner light. Ow. Two figures emerged from the craft, stepping onto the dusty ground. One was tall and insect-like, with a segmented body and multiple limbs that clicked softly as it moved. The other was humanoid, with translucent skin that shimmered like water. Both stopped a short distance from the artifact and stared directly at the eclipse. They know we're here, Mia whispered, her voice trembling. Claire nodded. Looks like it. Everyone stay sharp. The two aliens approached the ship cautiously. As they drew closer, the crew could see their features more clearly. The insectoid creature later identified as a Veil had large, multifaceted eyes that reflected the dim light. Its movements were precise, almost mechanical. The humanoid figure seemed more fluid, its shimmering skin rippling with every step. Neither spoke immediately, but their presence was enough to fill the air with tension. Finally, the Veil raised one of its limbs, pointing at the artifact. Its voice came through the ship's speakers, harsh and guttural. F activated. The relic, explain yourselves. Claire stepped forward, her voice steady, despite the knot in her stomach. We didn't activate anything. We just arrived here. We're scientists, exploring this system. The Kryn tilted its head, studying them intently. Its voice was softer, almost melodic. "Explorers? From Earth?" As Claire confirmed. "Who are you?" The Kryn gestured toward itself. "We are the Kryn. These are the Veil. We are adversaries. Adversaries." Mia repeated, glancing nervously at the others. The Veil clicked angrily. "Enough talk. Tell us why you are here." Claire held up her hands, trying to appear non-threatening. "We're here because of the energy readings. We didn't know this place existed until we detected them." The Kryn nodded slowly. "Relic emits those signals. It is ancient, left by those who came before us. And now it has chosen to speak," the Veil added, its tone accusing. "Why did it mention your species?" "I don't know," Claire insisted. "We heard the Force message, too. Something about not dragging humans into your conflict." "What does that mean?" The two aliens exchanged a glance, their expressions unreadable. For a moment, neither spoke. Then the Kryn turned back to the crew. "This is a war that has lasted centuries. A war between our peoples. Your kind was never meant to be involved." Kyle scoffed, unable to stay silent any longer. "Yeah, well, maybe you should have thought of that before showing up here." The Veil's eyes narrowed and it clicked sharply. "Careful. Human. You do not understand the stakes." "No, we don't," Claire cut in, her voice firm. "And that's why we're leaving. This isn't our fight." The Kryn hesitated, then shook its head. "You cannot leave. Not yet. The relic has acknowledged your presence. It may hold answers we need." "Answers?" Jacob asked, speaking up for the first time. "Answers to what?" "To ending the war," the Kryn replied simply. The Veil hissed, stepping forward aggressively. "Lies. The Kryn seek only power. They will use you to further their goals." "Enough," Claire shouted, surprising even herself. She stepped between the two aliens, her arms spread wide. "We're not taking sides. We're not getting involved. Whatever this relic is, it's not ours. Leave us out of it." For a moment, it seemed like the aliens might argue further. But then the Veil clicked once more and retreated a step. "It's very well, for now. If you choose a side, you will face consequences." With that, the Veil turned and climbed back into its craft. The Kryn lingered a moment longer, its shimmering form flickering faintly. "Think carefully, humans. Your decision will shape the future." Then it too returned to its ship, and both vessels lifted off the ground, disappearing into the sky. The crew watched in stunned silence as the dust settled once more. "Leaving them alone with the artifact," well, Kyle said after a long pause, breaking the tension. "That was intense, you think?" Jacob snapped, still typing furiously. At his console, "Do you have any idea how bad that could have gone?" "Bad. It already went bad," Kyle shot back. "They know about us now." "About Earth? How is that not bad?" "Stop it, both of you," Claire ordered, rubbing her temples. "Fighting won't help. We need to focus." Mia, who had been quiet throughout the exchange, finally spoke up. "What do we do now?" they said. "The relic holds answers." "Should we try to figure it out?" Claire hesitated. On one hand, the artifact was clearly dangerous. It had drawn the attention of two powerful alien species. On the other hand, it might hold information that could protect Earth. "We'll analyze it," she decided finally. "But carefully. Jacob, keep working on those symbols. Mia, see if there's any biological data we can gather. Kyle, keep the ship ready in case we need to leave quickly." "What about you?" Mia asked. "I'll keep thinking," Claire replied, her voice heavy with responsibility. "We can't afford to make the wrong choice here." As the crew got to work, the artifact continued to hum softly in the background. Its lights pulsed faintly, as if watching them. None of them noticed the subtle changes in its patterns or the way it seemed to respond to their emotions. For now, they were focused on survival. But deep down, each of them knew this was only the beginning. Back aboard the Eclipse, the crew tried to make sense of what had just happened. The encounter with the Veil and the Kryn had left them shaken, their minds racing with questions they couldn't answer. Jacob sat hunched over his console, his eyes glued to the screen as he analyzed the symbols from the artifact. Mia paced back and forth, her thoughts scattered between curiosity and fear. Kyle leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, muttering under his breath about how reckless the whole situation was. Claire stood near the window, staring out at the alien structure in silence, her mind heavy with responsibility. "We can't just sit here," Mia said finally, breaking the quiet. "We need to figure this out. What if the Veil come back? Or worse, what if they decide Earth is part of their war?" Kyle rolled his eyes. "And what exactly do you suggest we do?" "Walk up to that thing and ask it nicely to explain itself." "Maybe," Mia shot back, her voice sharp. "At least I'm trying to think of a solution instead of just complaining." "Stop it," Claire interrupted before Kyle could respond. Her tone was calm but firm. "Arguing isn't going to help. We need to focus." Jacob didn't look up from his work. "I'm still trying to decode these symbols. They're strange. It's like they're designed to mess with your brain. Every time I think I'm close, something changes." "What do you mean something changes?" Claire asked, stepping closer. "I don't know," Jacob admitted, frustration creeping into his voice. "It's like the patterns shift when I look at them too long. It's almost like they're alive." Mia frowned. "Alive? You think the artifact is some kind of living thing?" "It's possible," Jacob replied. "Or maybe it's just messing with us. Either way, it's not normal." Claire sighed. "All right, let's take a step back. We've got two alien species telling us this relic is important. One says it holds answers to ending their war. The other accuses the first of lying. Meanwhile, we have no idea what's true. Or not. And let's not forget the message," Mia added. "Please don't drag humans into this conflict. Whoever left that message knew we'd find it someday." "Yeah, well, whoever they were, they should have been clearer," Kyle muttered. "'Cause right now, we're stuck in the middle of something we don't understand." Claire ignored him and turned to Mia. "What about biological data? Did you find anything?" Mia shook her head. "Not yet, but I did notice something weird. When the artifact activated earlier, it felt warm, like it was generating heat. But not in a way I've ever seen before." "Great," Kyle said sarcastically. "So it's alive, it's warm, and it's probably plotting to take over the galaxy. Anything else we should know?" "Enough," Claire snapped, her patience wearing thin. "We're all stressed, but we can't afford to fall apart. If we want to get through this, we need to work together." The room fell silent for a moment. Each of them knew she was right, but the weight of the situation pressed down on them. They were just four people, far from home, facing forces beyond their understanding. The thought was overwhelming. Jacob broke the silence. "There's something else. I've been noticing patterns in the symbols. It's not just math or language there almost. Emotional, Mia repeated, confused. "Yeah," Jacob explained. "It's like they're designed to trigger certain feelings. Anger, fear, curiosity. It's subtle, but it's there." Claire frowned. "You think the artifact is influencing us?" "It's possible," Jacob admitted. "Maybe that's why we're all so on edge." "That's ridiculous," Kyle said, though his voice lacked conviction. "How could a rock manipulate our emotions?" "It's not a rock," Jacob countered. "It's advanced technology. Who knows what it's capable of?" Before anyone could respond, the lights in the ship flickered. A low hum filled the air, growing louder by the second. The crew exchanged worried glances as the artifact outside began to glow brighter. "What's happening now?" Mia asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Jacob replied, typing furiously. "But whatever it is, it's coming from the artifact." The hum reached a crescendo, and then, suddenly, the ship's systems went haywire. Alarms blared, screens flashed with static, and the temperature in the cabin dropped sharply. Claire grabbed onto the railing to steady herself as the ship rocked slightly. "Kyle, stabilize the ship," she ordered. "I'm trying," Kyle shouted back, his hands flying over the controls. "Something's interfering with the engines." The artifact pulsed once more, and then everything went dark. For a few seconds, the only sound was the crew's breathing. Then, slowly, the ship's systems came back online. The lights flickered back on, and the hum faded away. "What the hell was that?" Kyle demanded, his face pale. "I don't know," Claire admitted, but it felt like a warning. Mia hugged herself tightly, her eyes wide. Do you think it was testing us? Seeing how we'd react? Maybe, Jacob said quietly. Or maybe it was trying to communicate. Communicate what? Kyle snapped. That it doesn't want us here? Or that it does, Mia countered. Think about it. Why else would it send that message? Why show us the hologram? Maybe it wants us to understand. Understand? What? Kyle asked. That we're pawns in some alien war? Claire said firmly. It wants us to choose. The others turned to her, surprised by the certainty in her voice. Choose what? Mia asked. Whether to get involved, Claire explained. The Veil and the Kryn both want something from us. But the artifact, it's different. It's giving us a choice. To stay out of this, or to step in. What happens if we step in? Kyle asked, his voice quieter now. I don't know, Claire admitted. But whatever it is, it'll change everything. The room fell silent again as the weight of her words sank in. Each of them knew the stakes were higher than they'd realized. This wasn't just about surviving the mission anymore. It was about deciding the future of humanity. Jacob broke the silence. If we're going to make a choice, we need more information. I'll keep working on the symbols. Maybe there's a clue in there. Mia nodded. I'll check the artifact's energy readings again. There has to be something we missed. Kyle hesitated, then uncrossed his arms. Fine, I'll keep the ship ready. But if things go south, we're leaving. No arguments. Claire looked at each of them, her expression serious. Agreed. But remember, whatever we do it together. The artifact loomed silently outside, its surface shimmering faintly. None of them noticed the way it seemed to pulse in rhythm with their heartbeats or the way it seemed to watch them, waiting for their next move. For now, they were focused on survival. But deep down they all knew the hardest decisions were yet to come. The crew of the Eclipse worked tirelessly, each member focused on their task. Jacob sat hunched over his console, his eyes darting between lines of data as he tried to decipher the artifact's symbols. Mia moved back and forth between her equipment and the window, studying the artifact through both instruments and her own observations. Kyle stayed near the controls, his hands resting lightly on the levers, as if ready to launch the ship at a moment's notice. Ow. Claire stood in the center of the room, watching them all, her mind racing with possibilities. Despite their efforts, progress was slow. The artifact remained an enigma, its purpose hidden behind layers of complexity. Jacob sighed in frustration, leaning back in his chair. I'm getting nowhere, he admitted. Every time I think I've got something, it shifts. It doesn't want to be understood. Mia didn't look up from her work. Maybe that's the point. Maybe it's testing us. Testing us for what? Kyle asked sharply. To see if we're smart enough to figure it out? Because if that's the case, we're failing. Claire stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. We're not failing. We're learning. This isn't going to be easy, but we can't give up. Before anyone could respond, Mia gasped softly. She had been examining the energy readings from the artifact when something unusual caught her attention. Wait, there's something here, she said, her voice trembling with excitement. There's a secondary signal coming from beneath the surface? What do you mean? Claire asked, moving closer. I mean, there's more to this thing than we thought, Mia replied. It's faint, but it's definitely there. Like another structure buried under the artifact. Jacob's eyes widened. Another structure? Are you sure? Mia nodded. Positive. It's deeper, but it's connected. Whatever it is, it's emitting a different kind of energy. Claire hesitated. Exploring further felt risky. Every step they took seemed to pull them deeper into the mystery. But ignoring the signal wasn't an option either. All right, she said finally. Let's check it out, but carefully. Kyle groaned. Of course. Because wandering around alien ruins always ends well. Ignoring him, Mia grabbed her scanner and headed for the airlock. Jacob followed close behind, eager to see what they might find. Claire led the way, her hand resting on the weapon at her side just in case. They descended onto the moon's surface, their boots crunching against the dusty ground. The artifact loomed above them, its surface shimmering faintly in the dim light. Following Mia's directions, they walked around the base of the structure, until they found what looked like an entrance, a narrow opening partially hidden by rocks and debris. Jacob knelt down to examine it, brushing away the dust with his gloved hand. "This wasn't natural," he said.
What?
"It's been sealed intentionally. Can we open it?" Claire asked. Jacob hesitated. "Probably, but should we?" Mia stepped forward. "We don't have a choice. If there's something inside, we need to know what it is." With Claire's nod, Jacob began working on the seal. It took several minutes of careful tinkering, but eventually the entrance slid open with a low hiss. A rush of cool air spilled out, carrying with it a faint metallic smell. The crew exchanged glances before stepping inside. The chamber beyond was small and dimly lit, its walls covered in the same strange symbols as the artifact outside. In the center of the room stood another structure, a smaller version of the one above. It hummed softly, its surface glowing faintly. As they approached, the glow intensified, and a hologram flickered to life. Unlike the previous message, this one showed images instead of figures. The crew watched in stunned silence as scenes unfolded before them. Cities burning, skies filled with ships, and people screaming in terror. The images shifted, showing Earth under attack not once but repeatedly. Different battles, different outcomes, but the same result: destruction. This is a simulation," Mia whispered, her voice shaking.
Light is showing us what could happen if we choose wrong.
"Choose wrong," Jacob repeated. "What does that even mean?" "It means we're being warned," Claire said quietly. Her face was pale, her expression grim. "If we side with the Veil or the Crinor, if we get involved at all, this is what happens." Kyle clenched his fists. "So we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. Is that what you're saying?" No, Mia interrupted. "Look closer. There's more." The hologram changed again, showing a map of the galaxy. A single star blinked brightly, surrounded by others. Then text appeared in a language none of them recognized, but somehow they understood it. "Earth," Mia read aloud. "There, marking our location and warning us," Claire added, "telling us to stay out of this." The hologram faded, leaving the chamber silent once more. The crew stood in stunned silence, the weight of what they'd seen pressing down on them. Finally, Mia spoke. "Can't ignore this. If we go back without telling someone, we can't tell anyone," Claire interrupted sharply. "Not yet. If word gets out, Earth will panic. Governments will make decisions based on fear, not reason. But we can't just pretend this didn't happen," Mia protested. "I'm not saying we pretend," Claire replied. "I'm saying we handle this carefully. First, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." Jacob nodded slowly. "She's right. If we act too quickly, we might make things worse." Kyle crossed his arms, his jaw tight. "And what happens if the Veil or the Kryn come back?" "What do we tell them?" "The truth," Claire said simply. "That we're not choosing sides, that we're protecting Earth." Mia hesitated. "Do you really think they'll believe us?" "I don't know," Claire admitted, "but it's the only plan we've got." As they made their way back to the ship, the artifact pulsed faintly behind them, as if acknowledging their decision. None of them noticed the subtle changes in its patterns or the way it seemed to react to their emotions. For now, they were focused on survival. But deep down, they all knew the hardest part was still ahead. Back aboard the Eclipse, tensions ran high. Kyle paced back and forth, muttering under his breath about how reckless the whole situation was. Mia sat at her station, staring at the data from the hidden chamber, her mind racing with possibilities. Jacob worked tirelessly on the symbols, determined to uncover their secrets. And Claire stood by the window, watching the artifact with a mixture of awe and dread. They had seen the future, or at least one possible version of it. Now they had to decide whether to change it. But no matter what choice they made, one thing was certain: humanity's fate rested in their hands. The mood aboard the Eclipse was tense. After their discovery in the hidden chamber, the crew couldn't shake the images from the hologram. The burning cities, the terrified screams, and the blinking star marking Earth's location haunted them. Each of them carried the weight of what they had seen, but none of them spoke about it openly. Instead, they worked in silence. their movements mechanical as they tried to process what it all meant. Jacob sat at his station, his eyes glued to the screen as he continued decoding the symbols. His hands moved quickly over the keyboard, but his mind kept drifting back to the simulation. He couldn't stop thinking about the destruction, about how easily humanity could be wiped out if they made the wrong choice. This isn't just a warning, he muttered under his breath. It's a threat. Mia, sitting nearby, looked up from her own work. What did you say? Nothing, Jacob replied quickly, shaking his head, just trying to focus. Mia frowned, but didn't press him. She knew what he was feeling. The simulation had shaken her too. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the same scenes. Earth crumbling under alien attacks. People running for their lives. It felt personal, as if the artifact had reached into her mind and shown her exactly what she feared most. Kyle wasn't handling it well either. Paced back and forth across the bridge, his boots clicking against the metal floor. His hands were clenched into fists, and his jaw was tight. We're wasting time, he said suddenly, breaking the silence. Sitting here, staring at screens, it's not going to save anyone. Claire turned to him, her voice calm but firm. Then what do you suggest we do, Kyle? Rush down there and start shooting? You don't even know who's telling the truth. I know one thing, Kyle shot back. If we sit here doing nothing, we're just waiting to get attacked. The Veil and the Kryn both know we're here. They'll come back, and when they do, we need to be ready. We are ready, Claire replied, but being ready doesn't mean rushing into danger. It means making smart decisions. Smart decisions, Kyle scoffed. You call this smart? We've got two alien species fighting over some ancient relic and we're stuck in the middle of it. How is that smart? Nuff, Claire snapped, her patience wearing thin. Not arguing with you, Kyle. If you've got a better plan, I'm listening. Otherwise, get back to work. Kyle glared at her for a moment, then turned away. Muttering under his breath, he knew she was right, but that didn't make it any easier. The uncertainty gnawed at him, making it hard to focus. He hated feeling powerless, especially when so much was at stake. Meanwhile, Mia had been quietly analyzing the data from the hidden chamber. She studied the energy readings. Something unusual caught her attention. Wait a minute, she said softly, leaning closer to her screen. There's something here I didn't notice before. What is it? Claire asked, stepping over to her station. It's the energy signal from the second artifact, Mia explained. It's not just different, it's shifting, like it's responding to something. To what? Jacob asked, joining them. Don't know, Mia admitted. But look at this. She pointed to a graph on her screen. The lines were moving erratically, forming patterns that seemed almost intentional. It's like it's communicating. Communicating? Claire repeated, her brow furrowing. With us, maybe, Mia said. Or maybe with something else. Before anyone could respond, the ship's sensors beeped sharply. A new signal had appeared on the radar fleet of ships approaching fast. Claire immediately moved to the window, her heart pounding. In the distance, dozens of vessels appeared on the horizon, their shapes unmistakably alien. Some were sleek and insect-like, while others shimmered faintly, their forms fluid and organic. The Veil and the Kryn, Jacob said grimly. They're here. Claire didn't waste time. Kyle, get us airborne. Now. Kyle sprang into action, his hands flying over the controls. The Eclipse lifted off the ground, its engines roaring to life. Outside, the alien ships began to circle, their movements coordinated and deliberate. The crew watched in silence as the massive fleet surrounded them, cutting off any chance of escape. This isn't good, Kyle muttered, gripping the controls. Tightly, what do we do now? Stay calm, Claire ordered. We don't know why they're here yet. As if on cue, a transmission came through the ship's speakers. The deep, guttural voice of the Veil filled the cabin. Humans, you have interfered with matters beyond your understanding. Surrender the relic, or face the consequences. The Kryn's melodic voice followed shortly after. Do not listen to them. They seek only to destroy. The relic belongs to no one. Hand it over, and we will ensure your safety. Claire exchanged a glance with the others. Neither side was offering much of a choice. We're not giving you anything, she replied firmly. This isn't our fight. The veil clicked angrily. Your defiance will cost you dearly. Your lies will cost you trust, the Kryn countered. Choose wisely, humans. The transmissions ended, leaving the crew in stunned silence. The alien ships continued to circle, their weapons trained on the Eclipse. The situation was dire and everyone knew it. We can't fight them, Mia said softly, breaking the tension. We're outnumbered. We don't have to fight, Claire replied. We just have to survive. Jacob nodded slowly. She's right. If we can hold them off long enough, maybe we can find a way out. How? Kyle asked. They've got us surrounded. There's always a way, Claire said, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. We just have to think. For a moment, no one spoke. The hum of the artifact outside grew louder, almost as if it were reacting to the tension. Then Jacob's eyes widened. Wait a second, he said, turning to the others. What if we use the artifact against them? Against them, Mia repeated, confused. How? We don't know what it's capable of, Jacob explained. But it's clear it's powerful. Maybe we can activate it somehow, use it to create a distraction, or even disable their ships. Claire hesitated. Missing the artifact was risky. They had no idea what it might do. But staying passive wasn't an option either. All right, she said finally. Let's try it, but carefully. Mia and Jacob immediately got to work, analyzing the artifact's energy patterns and trying to figure out how to activate it. Kyle kept the ship steady, his eyes darting between the radar and the window. Claire stood by, watching everything unfold with a mix of hope and dread. After several tense minutes, Jacob let out a triumphant shout. I've got it. There's a sequence in the symbols, it's like a trigger. Are you sure? Claire asked. No, Jacob admitted. But it's the best shot we've got. Do it, Claire ordered. Jacob typed furiously, sending a signal to the artifact. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the structure began to glow brighter. Its hum grew louder, vibrating through the ship. Outside, the alien fleet reacted immediately, their ships jerking slightly as if caught off guard. What's happening? Mia asked, her voice trembling. I don't know, Jacob replied. But it's working. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the artifact, engulfing the area in light. When the glare faded, the alien ships were gone. The fleet had vanished, leaving the Eclipse alone once more. The crew stared in stunned silence, their hearts racing. Did we just win? Kyle asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't think so, Claire replied, her expression grim. That was too easy. As if on cue, the artifact began to pulse again, its lights flickering erratically. The hum grew louder, almost deafening. Then, without warning, it exploded in a burst of energy, sending shockwaves rippling through the air. The Eclipse rocked violently, its systems failing, as the crew struggled to regain control. When the chaos finally subsided, the artifact was gone. Nothing remained but a scorched crater where it had once stood. The crew sat in stunned silence, their minds reeling from what they had just witnessed. What just happened? Mia whispered. I don't know, Claire admitted. But whatever it wasn't natural. Jacob shook his head, his face pale. I think we triggered something big. Kyle clenched his fists, his voice tight with frustration. And now we're stuck cleaning up the mess. Claire took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. We'll figure it out. Together. For now, they were safe but the artifacts. Destruction had left behind more questions than answers. And deep down, they all knew. The hardest part was still ahead. The Eclipse drifted silently through space, its systems battered and failing after the explosion. The crew sat in stunned silence, their minds struggling to process what had just happened. Outside the ship, the moon's surface was scarred by the artifact's destruction. A massive crater marked the spot where it had once stood. The alien fleet that had surrounded them moments earlier was gone, leaving no trace of its presence. It felt like a miracle, but none of them believed it was over. Mia broke the silence first, her voice trembling. What did we do? Did we destroy it? Jacob shook his head, still staring at his console. I don't think we destroyed it. Think it's self-destructed. Why? Claire asked, her tone sharp with frustration. Why would it do that? I don't know, Jacob admitted. But whatever it wasn't random. That thing was alive, or at least smart enough to make decisions. Maybe it didn't want the Veil or the Kryn to have it. Kyle snorted. Great. So now we've pissed off 2 alien species and blown up their precious relic. What's next? Warship showing up to vaporize us? No one's going to vaporize us, Claire said firmly, though her voice lacked conviction. She turned to Mia. Did you get anything useful from the artifact before it exploded? Mia hesitated, then nodded slowly. There was something. A map. It showed another structure, somewhere else in the galaxy. But I couldn't pinpoint its exact location. A second artifact, Jacob asked, his eyes widening. You're saying there are more of these things out there? Possible, Mia replied. Maybe even more than one. The symbols hinted at a network like they were all connected. Claire sighed, running a hand through her hair. Hey, so this isn't over. Even if we wanted to walk away, we can't. Those aliens will keep coming until they find what they're looking for. And Earth is in the middle of it, Mia added softly. Her voice carried a weight that made the others uneasy. If the Veil and the Kryn figure out where we're from, won't let that happen, Claire interrupted. Sharply. We'll seal the coordinates and keep them hidden. No one needs to know about the map, not yet. Kyle leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. And what happens when they come knocking again? You think they're just going to forget about us? They might, Jacob said quietly. The artifact erased everything it wiped there. Database is clean. They don't know where Earth is anymore. How do you know that? Kyle demanded, his voice rising. Because I saw it, Jacob replied. Before the explosion, the artifact sent out a pulse, disrupted their systems. Whatever data they had on us, it's gone. Claire nodded. That gives us time. Not much, but enough to prepare. For what? Kyle snapped. For them to show up again. For another relic to explode in our faces. For survival, Claire shot back. We're not soldiers, Kyle. We're scientists. Our job is to protect Earth, not drag it into someone else's war. Kyle opened his mouth to argue, but stopped himself. He knew she was right, even if he didn't like it. The weight of their responsibility hung heavy in the air, pressing down on all of them. As the hours passed, the crew worked to stabilize the eclipse. Jacob focused on repairing the damaged systems, his hands moving quickly as he patched together wires and circuits. Mia scoured the data logs, searching for any remaining traces of the artifact's secrets. Kyle kept watch at the controls, his eyes scanning the radar for signs of danger. And Claire stayed by the window, staring out at the stars, lost in thought. Eventually, Mia walked over to Claire, breaking her concentration. What are you thinking about? The future, Claire replied without turning around. What happens? Next. How do we stop this from happening again? Mia hesitated. Do you think we made the right choice? Destroying the artifact, I mean. It was the only way, but it wasn't the only way, Claire admitted. It was the safest way for. Now, but it doesn't solve the problem. Veil and the Kryn are still out there, fighting over something we barely understand. So what do? Mia asked. We stay quiet, Claire said firmly. We go back to Earth, seal the coordinates, and act like this never happened. Humanity isn't ready for something like this. Not yet. Mia nodded slowly, though doubt lingered in her eyes. And if they find us anyway, then we fight, Claire replied simply. But not until we have no other choice. Later that night, as the others slept, Mia sat alone in the dimly lit cabin. She pulled up the data logs from the artifact, scrolling through the fragmented images and symbols. Something about the map kept drawing her attention, a faint pattern. Etched into the edges of the star chart, looked familiar, almost like her thoughts were interrupted by a soft groan. Turning, she saw Jacob sitting up in his seat, rubbing his temples. Can't sleep either? She asked quietly. He shook his head. Too much on my mind, you okay? She asked. I don't know, he admitted. I keep thinking about the artifact. About what it showed us. What if we missed something? What if there's more to it? There probably is, Mia replied. But we can't think about that now. We did what we had to do. Jacob sighed. Yeah, I guess. They sat in silence for a while, the hum of the ship filling the empty spaces between them. Finally, Mia spoke again.
Oh.
Do you think we'll ever see something like that again? Another artifact? Maybe, Jacob said. But if we do, we'll be ready. Mia smiled faintly. You sound so sure. I'm not, Jacob admitted, but we don't have a choice. If we want to protect Earth, we have to try. Next morning, the crew gathered on the bridge. The Eclipse was limping toward home, its engines sputtering but holding steady. Claire stood at the center, addressing the group. We are heading back to Earth, she said. When we get there, we'll report our findings, but only to the people who need to know. The rest stays classified. What about the map? Kyle asked. It stays sealed, Claire replied. No one touches it unless absolutely necessary. And if they ask why? Jacob asked. Tell them the truth, Claire said. That we don't have all the answers. Not yet. The crew nodded, their expressions grim but determined. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they also knew they had no choice. Humanity's fate rested in their hands, and they couldn't afford to fail as the eclipse approached Earth. The planet grew larger in the windows, a blue and green jewel floating in the vastness of space. For a moment, the crew allowed themselves to feel a flicker of hope. Despite everything they had been through, they had survived. It protected their world for now, but deep down they all knew the universe was vast, and conflict seldom stayed buried forever. Somewhere out there, the Veil and the Kryn continued their endless war. And somewhere else, another artifact waited, watching silently for the next chapter to begin.